So welcome back to the CCA workbench. And you know, Dave, crimping is not something that you typically know and understand inshore. You know, we tie everything on with a uni knot and we join braided lines with leaders and whatnot. But when you go big, whether it's for shark or whether it's marlin, whether it's kingfish, crimping is a must.
Well, you know, it's the way to go. You know, a lot of people ask you, why are you crimping it? Well, it's because when you're using real heavy stuff, like the 200-pound mono or so, it's kind of hard to tie a knot in it.
Correct.
You can tie a knot in it, but it's going to be a giant bulky knot, and it might not hold that well. When you start getting this really large diameter stuff, it gets tricky. So what we do is we use we use a crimp to get them. And there's different types of crimps. There's single barrel, which are kind of like these, these big aluminum ones here, which are a single barrel, which means it's just a tube. Just a tube. And then you've got these double barrel ones, which you see like this one.
Okay, hold on, wait. Let's get the single barrel first.
Get to look at the single barrels, which is a big tube, and those are good for monofilament.
Now this is double barrel.
And these double barrel ones are more size to the line. These are tiny.
So you can see
there's two barrels.
These.
Correct. Those are for wire and or mono that'll fit through the tubes.
And so typically you buy them for the size mono it's going in there.
Correct. It's very important. There's a little trick, but there's very important to use the size mono that matched your crimp, and vice versa. And a lot of times it's even more important to match the manufacturer with the leader and the crimp. Like, you have to have a Momoy crimp, a Momoy leader, and if you don't use those Momoy crimps on that Momoy leader, you might have a problem. There is a way to avoid all problems when crimping if you crimp correctly, and that is to use two. If you always use two, you will never have to worry about a crimp slipping. The main problems with crimp isn't that you do them too loose and one will break. What happens most of the time is people use a big bench crimper or a big double locking set that'll come down really hard. And if you're using the wrong crimp and that thing comes down too hard, your break will go like this. It's good, and then it busts way down here because you've put it too tight. It'll slip and still hold, slip and still hold. But if you put it too tight, it'll get real tight and pop. It'll break easy. And you don't want to damage that stuff inside. And a good way to keep from damaging the stuff inside is to use a cheap tool.
A cheap crimping tool like this.
A cheap crimping tool. If you use one of those heavy bench ones and ones with all the adjustments on it, or even a good heavy, like a bolt cutter style with the articulate handle, so you can really put force on it. If you have just a little bit too much force on your crimp, it will fail. It will make the stuff inside fail. But if you use these little handheld ones and squeeze it as hard as you can, those handles will usually come together before you'll hurt 400-pound monofilament.
So let's go through this process, Dave.
Right.
All right. So here's a crimp that hasn't been mashed.
Right. You've got it in there wrong immediately.
That's why I'm asking you.
Exactly.
See, what I'm saying is I want you to lead us through the right process.
Right. Well, the crimp should let go a little bit. The crimp should fit in both sides like that in the slot, and you should be able to see a little bit of the crimp poking out when you go to crimp it, because if you crimp it too close to the end,
then you mash it and crack it.
Well, what happened is you can mash it so far that you create an edge.
That cuts your line.
That can cut your line. And if you're back off an 1/8 of an inch or even a 1/16 of an inch from the edge, and you crimp it down hard, what you'll have is a 45-degree angle where that crimp comes out.
I'm going to crimp this. I'm going to go ahead and mash it. Look,
yeah,
it's already mashed and closed,
right,
like so.
Right.
And then let's take a look at how it looks so far.
Right.
Did I do that correct?
Exactly. You've got it. It's flaring out at the end.
And now you're going to want to do that again, yes?
Right. You can do it if it's a long crimp. You can actually do it 3 times. You can do it once close to the end, once in the middle, and once close to the other end. I like to do both ends and then do the middle. Some guys like to do it.
Is that how you do it?
That's how I like to do it.
Because that way you can divide it into a third.
Into thirds, easy, so I can see it. But also when you're going to use 2 crimps like this is how it's supposed to look too. See how that one's flared at the ends? All of them are flared at the ends. And when you put 2 crimps together, you want to make sure that you leave a good little gap in between, especially when using monofilament. If you put 2 crimps too close together and you squeeze them, it's like toothpaste in a tube. That material has to go somewhere. And if you've got the crimps too close together and you squeeze them both real tight together, that material is going to jam up in the middle and it'll make it a weak spot. This is what happens when you put the crimp in how you had it the first way. When you have it in sideways, you can see that it mashes in the middle and really crushes one side of the monofilament. You can tell the difference between the nice round barrel
and potentially
the mash.
The side that really needs to be crimped could slip.
Correct.
Because there's not mashed on the side where the tag end is.
Correct. It would probably break in here before that would happen. And I tell you what, if you put 2 of them on here, that probably would still hold regardless. You know,
like
so.
Good. Like
Correct.
this one.
Correct. That's a double one, and it would probably hold. Now, when you're using this cable, you also want to use, when we're making rigging set hook sets and stuff, we want to use this big heavy cable, and you're going to use these kind of things. The most important thing when using this cable is using the proper cutter. See how that end is very, very fine?
Yeah.
It's because I'm using the right cutter. If you try to use one of the cutters on a pair of pliers or even one of these, it's not going to work. This will work. This is a cable cutter, and it's made to cut cable. And you can see the top groove, especially not even I wouldn't even use the bottom groove because it's too round. But the top groove actually makes a triangle shape. And if you can have that triangle come down on your cable, it'll make a nice clean cut. A Felco is a really good brand of cable cutter, a Felco.
I learned a lot. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Thank you for. I mean, I'm so much smarter now, Brie. I know I don't
I was
look
going to
smart.
say the same thing. You took the words out of my mouth. I'm so much smarter, and we're all crimp skilled now.